Alright, welcome back. So, Casablanca, voted on the AFI Top 100 Films Ever Made as the #2 film. Pretty good. And to this day, you can go to most stores and buy it or rent it. That's pretty amazing, considering it's nearly, or actually over 60 years old now. And so we have to ask ourselves, if it was a piece of propaganda, why has it lasted so long? I think I alluded to that a little bit earlier. The acting, the sets, the emotion, it all connects with us as human beings. And even if it is a piece of propaganda, even if now we can look back on it now and think, wow, even though it was a cause we'd probably all support, it definitely was influenced and directed by the government, it still stands the test of time. I think a lot of that is the way it looks. Though we're looking more at the cultural influence the movie had this week, I do want to touch just for a brief moment on the artistic level of this movie. If you notice, there's a lot of shadows. There's lighting where there's some characters that are in the dark, and then there's characters that have textures of light coming across their face. The sets seem as if they're on location at times, and there's a lot of deep focus, which next week we're going to talk a lot about in Citizen Kane, where you could have a character in the background and a character in the foreground, and they're both in focus. That depth of field where you're able to see a lot going on. This is definitely a step in the direction that cinema was heading. This movie is not a film noir movie. It's a new term for you. I'm going to define it for you better next week. It was a whole genre of detective-type movies. Humphrey Bogart played a few characters in some of these film noir movies. And Citizen Kane definitely has a similar look and artistic appeal to it. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. I wanted you to notice how these movies now are starting to look. They're not flat anymore. It's not just a stage with lighting coming down on people, kind of like my really poor lighting here, where it's flat. There's depth to it. You're drawn into that world. The camera is moving into that world. The lighting seems realistic, and a lot of that shows up here in Casablanca, and we're going to talk about that next week when we watch Citizen Kane and talk about Orson Welles. So don't forget your assignment. What I'd like you to do is consider these thoughts. Now, you don't have to go through and answer each of these questions all the way through, but allow these questions to stir up some thoughts in your mind. Why do some people call this movie a piece of propaganda? So in that, I want you to kind of define propaganda and how, if it does, if Casablanca is a piece of propaganda, what are some of the elements? Now be specific and point those out to me. Don't just say, oh, it is propaganda because it deals with World War II and Nazis. No, give me a couple points in the movie where it stands out. How specifically was it trying to influence the audience? Is it insignificant and just a little bit? Or are there some real blatant moments in here that they're trying to manipulate us? And how did the government influence Hollywood? How did that work? We've talked about it a little bit. I've given you a couple pages to look at in the book, some online websites. Kind of just talk about that briefly. And then ask a question. Can art and politics go hand in hand? Should they go hand in hand? Is there maybe a time they should and a time they shouldn't? Think about that. I think even today we struggle with this issue. There are movies that come out often. Sometimes they're more documentary based, and we watch them and we feel so influenced that, oh wow, I never realized this and I feel so bad for those cows, or oh, I didn't know the world was going to explode next year because of global warming, and oh man, we need to do something about it. Or, you know, a couple movies that came out not too long ago, two Michael Moore movies, Sicko and Fahrenheit 9/11, both present an interesting argument. But is it a fair argument? Is it one-sided? Does he go to the other side and try to, as a journalist, present both sides and kind of see the synthesis between the two? Or is he presenting maybe a piece of his own propaganda? I bring that up not so much for argument or for just controversy, but for the fact of reminding us that we're not so far removed from this. We just finished an election where the media, more than ever, was very much involved in this election. How did it fare? Was it fair and balanced? Was it one-sided? Did both sides end up with negative reports at the same time? The question of influence, the question of propaganda, the question of manipulating the masses through this medium is still very prevalent today. So I want you to think about that. The paper should be 3 to 4 pages. This is one of your longest ones. Take some time to think about it. Please do not go to a website and copy it and put it in your paper and not cite it. I have to say that this is probably the one paper. There's another one, usually it's the Citizen Kane one, but this is one of the papers where oftentimes I have somebody who, for whatever reason, because they were stressed out or they didn't have enough time, go to a website, copy and paste several different pieces together, and present it to me. I've seen most of those websites by now. I start to get it. I want your thoughts. Even if they're not the greatest thoughts in the world, I want to see what you're thinking about. I want you to get your mind rolling and perhaps a direction you haven't thought before. I think that's one of the biggest reasons for college is critical thinking. I don't want critical copy and paste. I'd like to hear your thoughts, your ideas. Be a good speller. Be as grammatical as possible. Try to put it together in a proper essay form with proper paragraphs and so forth. But, just if you read somebody and you just don't think you can say it any better than them, just say, Roger Ebert had this thought, and put it in there as a sentence. I don't need block quotes, but put a sentence. And then go, he continued to say this, and paraphrase him for a little bit. And then give me your thoughts about what Ebert thought. Why you liked what he said, or why you didn't like what he said. I mention him as an example because he's one of the people who you'll see on the internet has talked about this subject. But please be ethical, be moral on it, but have fun with it. It's a great subject. I look forward to reading your papers, and I do hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Please give me a little bit of grace this weekend. I will try to get back to you if you have any questions as soon as I can, but we will be going out of town for the funeral, and next week I should be back on track, getting papers together in the grade book, and moving forward towards a fantastic finish in the second half. All right, guys, thanks so much. Have fun. Bye-bye.